Hi Jim, sorry about that. So you've got a 351 Windsor, and you got a couple of oil leaks to start off with. Is that it? Right. So it's a crate engine, is it? A reconditioned one. And it could have been. So was it sitting around for a fair bit before you bought it, possibly? Right. Okay. Well, that's going to be a recipe for the seals to go hard and dry on you. So, look, they're just what we call like now old new seals. So they're not a lot of wear on them. It's just that they're so, like sometimes when you put seals into these engines, they could have been on a part shop shelf for a decade before you get them, and then you put them in, and they're depleted already. But you put them in, and they probably took 30 years to leak initially, and then they take 3 years in there, or 3 months sometimes, and they're back to the way it was. But all they've done is they've lost what they call the volatiles. Now those volatiles are made up of a whole range of different stuff. Most of it is unidentifiable. A lot of it's trace element, but the major constituents are a group collectively and generically called phenyl esters. They're the bit that gave that seal its elasticity, its memory, and some of its volume. And when you lose a little bit of that at a time, it simply just goes hard a little bit at a time, and starts to leak. When you've got shaft seals, the shaft seal is either operating in one or two ways. It's operating as a lip seal, which is using the engine oil pressure to push the lip up against the rotating shaft, or it's a band that pulls down around the shaft. And as it pulls down around the shaft, it closes around the shaft, fixes the problem. If the seal loses its elasticity, in either case, it just doesn't work correctly. And it's just a matter of returning some of those characteristics back into it that once prevented from leaking. Now to get those chemicals back into those phenyl esters, that's what the 230 is. That's made up of a whole range of different stuff, but the major constituents are those group of phenyl esters. Now, all you need to do is to use the product to get the best results at 100 mils per litre of oil. And all you do is you pour that into your oil, have that oil then interface with the seal, and it uses the heat of the engine to activate it. So when you heat the engine up, it thins the oil out, as it does, but also the casings of the engine heat up, and most of the seals are embedded in the casings. So the combination of the oil temperature and the heat of the casings will expand the seals up a little bit and open up the pores in the material, which will now allow these phenyl esters to accept it. Now, the business end of these phenyl esters, they're about 1/10 of a molecular weight of oil. They're super thin compared to the oil. They'll blend with the oil, but they just simply use the oil to get to the surface of the seal, and from there they'll permeate from one to the other almost like a dry sponge. It takes, like the older they are, or the more they are like a dry sponge, the less time it takes to revive them. You can generally find that, what I normally say about it is it's progressive. It should get a little bit better every time you drive it from the last time you drove it, and it doesn't take all that long for it to revive it. In modern seals, they generally, a lot of them seem to be Chinese seals now. They're slightly different animals, and they take around about 7 to 14 hours worth of cumulative driving, about 2 weeks worth of normal driving for most people, to get them to take up, to stop the leak. When the older they are, the more they are like a dry sponge, and the less time it takes to revive them. Now you can use this same product, by the way, from front to back on a vehicle. So you can put in the power steering, the engine, automatic transmission, manual transmission, differential, and in four-wheel drives you can use it on swivel hubs and transfer boxes. All right. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter where the leak is. Once it goes in, it'll mix with all the oil, and of course affect all the seals at the same time. In the engine, the pan, the tappet, the timing chain cover, the front main seal, the rear main seal, basically, and the valve stem seals as well. So that's generally you find the valve stem seals one of those ones that are affected by lack of use and will go hard sooner than later, and you start blowing a little bit of blue smoke as you take off a set of lights and stuff like that, and nothing until you sort of sit for a bit and idle for a bit of the next set of lights, and then take off again. You get a plume of blue smoke. Well, this product will make that go away as well. Mm. The idea is that if you're ready to change your oil, change it before you put it in. If you've got plenty of life left in your oil, just whack it in and leave it in there for the life of the oil. The longer you see, the thing is that what we're trying to do is fix the leak, but more to the point, we're trying to get enough up into that seal to probably give you years before it would tend to get back to the way it was. So short period, it stops the oil leak. Long period is rejuvenate the seal to a point where you can get a couple of years out of it before it wants to start leaking again. And of course, you can, it doesn't destroy the seal even at that point. If you hit it up again, it'll come back again. Right. All right. Yes. Yes. Ah, right, okay. Yeah. I did. Yeah. Did you when you say it was a reconditioned block out of the States, did they indicate that they'd stripped it completely and dipped it in a chemical bath? Yeah. Look, okay, we'll just put that to one side for a sec. What are you currently using in the way of coolant in there at the moment? Well, yeah, well, brand would be good if you know what is it. On Newline, right? Okay, and now. Did you went and bought it? So you bought a 5 litre pack of 96% antifreeze anti-boil, full concentrate, and then okay, and now this is a V8, isn't it? Yeah. So and it's got what, a desert cooler on the front, or is it copper brass, or? Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let me fill you in with a bit. Now you've got a cooling system that's probably about 15, 16 litres. You're pretty. You're okay with that, are you? There's about 11 litres. Right. Okay. Do you think you get it dry when you put the coolant in? Because like a normal 6-cylinder is about 10, 11 litres, and a V8 is generally a bit more than that. But I'll take it that you're right with that. So if you're saying 11 litres, then basically what you've got is a 50% solution of monoethylene glycol in there. So the glycol content is probably not the issue. So we'll just put that to one side and go back to the original thing I was going to say, is that sometimes what happens with these blocks is that when they've been reconditioned, they haven't been totally reconditioned. They haven't been stripped completely, and they've got a bit of age to them, and they could have been sitting around for a fair bit before they were stripped and rebuilt. Now, you get this ferrous oxide build-up in the block, and it doesn't take much. Like it might not be a tremendous amount in there. It might just be a dusting of ferrous oxide, but like 40 thou thick of ferrous oxide is on the internal walls of that water jacket is enough to reduce the entire efficiency of your cooling system by, something like 30%. Now, in the winter, that probably doesn't mean anything at all. But in the height of summer, you need every extra little bit of it, thermal capacity that you can screw out of it to stop the thing from overheating. You've got this huge cooling system and extra fans and what have you, yet it's still overheating when they didn't, in their day. But then again, you've improved the cooling system tenfold from its original efficiencies, because that was, the engine was built in an era where they had no idea what traffic was going to be like in 2020, but you've sort of overcome all those things with shrouds and bigger radiators and fans and what have you. So all it can be now is, if it is overheating, it is just doing it because you're not transferring the heat as fast as you're making it. That means that now when you get those big fluctuations in your temperature, what's actually happening is that you're driving, and because of that insulating effect, you're producing heat in the block, but you're not getting rid of it as fast as you're making it, and dumping it through the radiator because of this insulating effect. So you build it and build it and build it, and then all of a sudden the heat sink that you've got built up in your block overwhelms the coolant, and you see the temperature gauge moving towards the red. Now, you generally find that when you've got plenty of airflow over the vanes of the radiator, everything sort of copes. And you're not pushing it too hard, everything copes. But you come up to a high hill on a hot day, and you're taxing the engine a little bit more than what you normally would, and you've got less airflow sometimes. You can see the temperature gauge move up. And then you get to the top of the hill, go down the other side, comes back, or you come in off say the expressway and pull up at a set of lights, and whilst you're sitting there, the temperature gauge is on its way up, take off again, it teeters back. So it goes like that all day long. And if that's the scenario, then that's, I'd suggest that that's the problem. It's ferrous oxide buildup. Now, the other thing is that like we got the 239 kit, that Part A, Part B cleaner, that'll strip that out over a 2-day period, and you just idle it over a 2-day period. Idle it up to temperature, shut it down, let it cool, come back out, start her up again, let it cool again, and you do that as many times as you can as many times as you can fit in over a 2-day period, and it just strips the ferrous oxide and calcium out of the system. You're not going to have a lot of calcium. Anything that's going to be ferrous oxide. And with a filter sock in the top tank of the radiator, it'll catch all those little pieces coming through, so they don't block up the flutes of the radiator and stuff up everything. And this stuff, the 239 pack is pretty much inert to copper, brass, solder, cast iron, and cast aluminium. So you're not going to do any damage when using it. So it's ideal for what you've got. And you might find, see, what we can do too is to sort of monitor where you are in relationship to the clean. Now, what I mean by that is that you can tell by the colour of the liquid how far you are along with the cleaning process, because when you got when we've seen vehicles of age and we've got a snake camera and got right down to the guts of the cooling system. When you look down there, there are places where you get these build-ups of ferrous oxide. Now you got the build-up comes as like a top layer, which is the soft furry stuff, ferrous oxide. Then you got harder, denser layers below that, and then you got the cast iron. Now when you put the Part A in, which is the business end of the product, of the 239 product, it has a big reaction with that top layer of ferrous oxide. Because that's the soft furry stuff, and it breaks it down very quickly. It sends the liquid like a big brown scungy pea soup in there. So when you add it into the cooling system, it's clear. So within an hour or so of running it, it goes to murky brown. And then when you get past that top layer and you're down onto the harder, denser layers below it, because they're denser, the whole chemical reaction slows down somewhat and it goes more like an amber liquid. And then the closer you get back onto the cast iron and the less you've got to react with in the cooling system, the clearer that liquid becomes. So when you're doing this process, if you got to the end of the first day and you found that had gone through 3 colour changes and is now pretty much clear, that's all you need to do. But if you get to the end of the first day and there's it's still got a lot of colour to it, well then you know that needs to go 1 extra day at a time until you get it back to clear. Now 2 days is generally enough, but probably 1 to 2 days is going to be okay for your vehicle. But you know we've got guys coming to us with, you know, like a Packard that's been sitting under somebody's house for 70 years. And it's just you know, an absolute mess in there. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days to clean it right out completely. Yeah, right. No. Well, you won't boil it with 50% in there anyway. But that's not, you know, the thing that bothers me is that I think you're got less than a 50% solution of monoethylene glycol in your cooling system, and the reason I think that, and I don't know, but I'm not calling you a liar or you don't know your own vehicle, but don't blame me for something like that. But see, there are a certain amount of physics as well when it comes to glycol. Without boring you too much about these things, but see, if you start from the beginning and say, okay, what happens with water? What if you put water in a pot on a stove? What temperature would it boil at? And we all know that from school. You know, it's 100 degrees Celsius. But before it boils, it forms these little vapor bubbles on the saucepan wall. You've seen that when you're sort of watching an egg boil. Okay, so let's put that water into a cooling system and put a 14 or a 16 psi cap on there. Now that boil point is no longer 100 C, it's more like 104, 105. That's with that 16 psi cap. That's brought you a couple of extra brownie points. Now you with water, the vapor blanketing point, that point where it starts to form those vapor bubbles. Now, because those vapor bubbles are forming, they don't form, you know, the few vapor bubbles you can almost count on a saucepan wall. Because it's under pressure, they're forming in their trillions, and they're acting like an insulator between the liquid and the metal, reducing the efficiency of the cooling system to do its job. It just stuffs up everything. So. Now that's with water. Now we call that point where it starts to fail the vapor blanketing point, where it starts to build those vapor bubbles, the vapor blanketing point, and the boil point's the point where it's at full fail. Vapor blanketing point is where it starts to fail. Now where it starts to fail is the most important aspect of a cooling system. Right, so saying that, the vapor blanketing point of water in your cooling system would be about 88 C. Being that you're running around about 85 to 90 anyway, you couldn't use water in your cooling system at all. So you get to that point where it will just turn to vapor on the internal walls of the water jacket as soon as you got the vehicle up to temperature. Okay, so let's drop that out and put a 30% solution of monoethylene glycol as a made-up antifreeze anti-boil in there. Now the boil point of that is 118 C, which sounds like it should be adequate. And you never get, even at 118 C, you probably wouldn't be boiling out at any stage because 118 C is hot. But the vapor blanketing point, the point where it starts to fail, is about 90 C. So between water at 88 and 30% at 90, you haven't gained too many brownie points there at all. where it starts to fail, where it's not working efficiently anymore, and would give you the same symptoms as you suspect. You see